that or the other. I mean, they're able to kind of say to people, don't come and bother us because we will kill you. And my attitude is that now's the time to be firm. And we've got a great weapon on our side, and that is freedom and liberty. And it's got those two concepts have got the capacity to defeat ideologies of hate.
I don't think actually there's anything to do with a loss of American influence at all. I think we've got to go back and ask what changed policy, because policy has changed in the past few years. And what changed policy was September the 11th. That changed policy, but actually before September the 11th, this global movement with a global ideology was already in being. September the 11th was the culmination of what they wanted to do. But actually, you know, and this is probably where the policymakers such as myself were truly in error, is that even before September the 11th, this was happening in all sorts of different ways in different countries. I mean, in Algeria, for example, tens and tens of thousands of people lost their lives. This movement has grown, it is there, it will latch on to any cause that it possibly can and give it a dimension of terrorism and hatred. You can see this, you can see it in Kashmir, for example. You can see it in Chechnya. You know? You can see it in Palestine. Now, what is its purpose? Its purpose is to promote its ideology based on a perversion of Islam and to use any methods at all, but particularly terrorism to do that, because they know that the value of terrorism to them is, as I was saying a moment or two ago, it's not simply the act of terror, it's the chain reaction that terror brings with it. Terrorism brings the reprisal brings the additional hatred breeds the additional terrorism, and so on. Look, in a small way, we lived through that in Northern Ireland over many, many decades. Now, what happened after September the 11th, and this explains, I think, the President's policy, but also the reason why I have taken the view, and still take the view, that Britain and America should remain strong allies, shoulder to shoulder in fighting this battle, is that we are never going to succeed unless we understand they are going to fight hard. The reason why they are doing what they're doing in Iraq at the moment, and yes, it's really tough as a result of it, is because they know that if right in the center of the Middle East, in an Arab Muslim country, you've got a non-sectarian democracy, in other words, people weren't governed either by religious fanatics or secular dictators, you've got a genuine democracy of the people, well, how does their ideology flourish in such circumstances? So they have imported the terrorism into that country, preyed on whatever reactionary elements there are to boost it, and that's why we have the issue there. That's why the Taliban are trying to come back in Afghanistan. That is why the moment it looked as if you could get progress in Israel and Palestine, it had to be stopped. That's the moment when, as they saw there was a problem in Gaza, so they realized, well, there's a possibility now we can set the Lebanon against Israel. Now, it's a global movement, it's a global ideology. And if there's any mistake that's ever made in these circumstances, it's if people are surprised that it's tough to fight, because you're up against an ideology that's prepared to use any means at all, including killing any number of wholly innocent people. And I don't dispute part of the implication of your question at all, in the sense that you look at what is happening in the Middle East and what is happening in Iraq and Lebanon and Palestine, and of course there's a sense of shock and frustration and anger at what is happening and grief at the loss of innocent lives. But it is not a reason for walking away. It's a reason for staying the course and staying it no matter how tough it is, because the alternative is actually letting this ideology grip larger and larger numbers of people. And it is going to be difficult. Look, we've got a problem even in our own Muslim communities in Europe, who will half buy into some of the propaganda that's pushing it. The purpose of America is to suppress Islam. You know, Britain's joined with America in the suppression of Islam. And one of the things we've got to stop doing is stop apologizing for our own positions. You know, Muslims in America, as far as I'm aware, are free to worship. Muslims in Britain are free to worship. We have plural societies. You know, it's nonsense. The propaganda is nonsense, and we're not going to defeat this ideology until we in the West go out with sufficient confidence in our own position and say, this is wrong. It's not just wrong in its methods, it's wrong in its ideas, it's wrong in its ideology, it's wrong in every single wretched reactionary thing about it. And it will be a long struggle, I'm afraid. But there's no alternative but to stay the course with it, and we will.